Well, good afternoon. Welcome. Oh dear. Welcome to the Firebreak. The weather, I think, has decided that it wants to join in and just make sure that we're all playing our part, doesn't it? It's a bit gloomy. Fortunately, the wind has stopped, but it is soaking wet at the moment. I don't know if it is where you are, but it is here. Absolutely sopping. My trousers are, well, drenched. Not good, but there we go. It is good to be out and about and to be able to talk to you today. Just taking a little bit of exercise as we're permitted. I left my front door. I'll go back to it as well. Yeah, I think the weather has decided that they want to make sure that we're all playing our part, and we want to stay indoors, want to stay inside, want to stay nice and cosy and dry. Go on, put your slippers on, the rain is saying. Put your slippers on, turn the heating up, and make sure that you're nice and dry. I don't know about you, but we're less than 24 hours into this second lockdown, aren't we? The Firebreak lockdown. And already I'm starting to feel a little bit narky, a little bit miserable. I made a fatal error earlier today of reading through social media, reading through Facebook, and finding some things being said that I disagreed with. How dare people say things that aren't exactly what I think? And then I made the really daft mistake of entering into conversation, debate, no, let's call it what it was, argument with them. Not very clever, not very sensible, and it got me even more grumpy and narky and snarky and irritable. But there we go. I've got out of the house, away from that. And as I've left, I've just been thinking about a verse from the Bible that I've often found really challenging, but also really inspiring as well. It was written by St. Paul, one of the first ever church leaders, and he wrote it to one of the first ever churches, the church in Philippi in Greece. And so in that letter, in chapter 4, I think around about verse 12, he talks about how he's known what it is to have little. He's known what it is to not have lots. He's known what it is to have plenty as well. He's been in both scenarios where he's had everything he wanted, and he's been without as well. But he's learned, he says, I've learned to be content in every circumstance. I've learned what it is to be content, whether I have plenty or whether I'm in need. And there's been a lot of thinking today about whether or not we're able to get to those things that we don't have at the moment. We're only allowed to buy essentials, aren't we? And one person's essentials are different to another person's essentials, of course, and there are all sorts of scenarios we're thinking of. Gosh, what do we do if I need this and the shops aren't allowed to sell it to me? I think I find encouraging about what Paul said is that he's had to learn it. He's had to learn how to be content in every circumstance. He's had to learn how to cope when he's got plenty, because there's a challenge there for us, how to live when we've got everything we need. But also, he's learnt how to live when he doesn't have all that he wants, when we don't have the things that we long for, when we can't get at those things that perhaps we think we deserve and want in our lives. He has learnt what it is to be content in those circumstances. But he says content. He doesn't say to be overjoyed, to be delighted, to not care about not having things. He's learnt to be content, to know when he's not got everything he wants, but to be content with it. That doesn't mean that when things are wrong in the world, that he wasn't wanting to stand up and change them, to make things better, make things right. He wasn't kind of giving up on making a difference, and just be content. And if you see someone in desperate need, well, they need to be content with that as well. Not at all. Not at all. Paul wanted to change people's lives, to transform their situations, and we can still be the same while we learn to be content with the life we have. So this kind of big argument that's going on today about, whether we can have everything we need or not, if we see people in need, if we see people in genuine need over these next 17 days, and of course long after that as well, then we need to step up. We need to step in. We need to try to change our society in such a way as to make sure that people who are in desperate need actually get those things that they truly need. And not just our society, but around the world as well. And so maybe these next 17 days give us another bit of a pause and a bit of an opportunity to think, well, what does that mean for us then? What's my circumstance? So perhaps if you're the CEO and owner of a major multinational corporation. I know there's a couple of those who listen to Bro Madron's live streams, just a couple. Then the question for you is, how can you learn to be content in this world, but also make sure that you're helping others have what they need? Well, the answer is going to be pay your taxes, pay your work as well. If you're maybe the Prime Minister or an MP or a member of the Cabinet, the question for you has got to be, well, check your motivation. Be as sure as you possibly can be that the influence you're wielding, the ability you have to make change comes from the right place, and you're not doing things just for your own benefit or maybe to score points against those that you have come to hate because they represent something different to you. But that's not most of us, is it? Although those are good things for all of us to employ in our lives, to pay our taxes, to look after those who might maybe depend on us, and to check our motivation. Let's do that as well. But also let's try to learn to be content. Let's try to learn to be content over these next 17 days when we can't get at everything we might possibly have wanted. We're bound to have more than we need. And let's look out for those who are in need and make sure we help them and support them as best we can. Once Paul had said that, once he'd written that verse in Philippians, the very next thing he said was, I can do all this through Christ who gives me strength. To be content in any circumstance is a bit like a superpower, I reckon. I don't think that's within the natural ability of many people. But you know, the wonderful abundance of God's goodness and his grace, the way he pours his blessing down upon us with so many wonderful things, even in hard times. And that's not denying that times can be really tough and horrible things happen. But the amazing provision that God has given to the whole world that we don't share equally means that we're constantly in receipt of God's goodness and his grace and his mercy and his forgiveness. And so if Christ is in us, if Jesus is part of our life, then that means that we can learn to be content in every circumstance. Again, not to give up on changing the world, not to give up on looking after those who are in need, but to be content with our lot and to seek the better of others. I pray that Christ starts to work that within me, that Jesus starts to do that more and more within me, that he stops me being such a grumpy little beggar that I can be from time to time, and that he works on that within each of us. Just as well, one last little thing to say, a couple of bits of information. Of course, now we're in lockdown, church circumstances have changed again. We've produced a notice sheet and have been able to get it up online, but unfortunately it's not been able to be printed quite yet, and so it's possibly not going to arrive in onto people's doormats until Monday or Tuesday. Not quite sure, so apologies if the news gets too late, but of course we're going to be without our church services over the next couple of weeks. The next 3 Sundays there'll be no services in any of our churches again, and after that we're going to have to wait and see what the restrictions are post-lockdown as to whether we can return to church at that point. But we're going to continue to share services online, so there'll be a service tomorrow morning up on YouTube and Facebook at 10 o'clock. Bishop Andy was meant to be with us in church tomorrow, so very kindly he agreed to be interviewed over Zoom yesterday morning. So a few of us got together and had a chat with him via Zoom, and he shared some thoughts, some wisdom with us, and I've been able to put that into our online service for tomorrow. So 10 o'clock, log on to Facebook and Bro Madron there if you can, or look for us on YouTube or on our website bromadron.church/video, and you should be able to find our service tomorrow morning there. Do join in with that if you possibly can. We're still doing a couple of other things. So we have our coffee morning and prayer meeting on a Friday morning. Prayer at 9:30 until 10, and then 10 o'clock just time of chat together. Join us for that this Friday if you can. Vicky's going to be hosting that for us, so that's really good. And this next week, which is half term, both Sarah and I are going to be taking some time off to spend with our family, seeing as they're going to be at home. I'm stopping here because the road's over there and it's going to get noisy. Sarah and I are going to be taking the next 5 or 6 days off. So if you need us, do get in touch with us. But we're not going to be doing anything like morning prayer services, that kind of thing. But that will start up again after half term. So brilliant. Sorry, lots of information. I hope that's been helpful. Nice to be able to talk to you. God bless you all. See you soon.